You're listening to the Finding Truth podcast. When we're not getting distracted by Jacob's plain facts, we discuss taking ownership of our faith and what it looks like to follow Jesus in today's culture. Here are your hosts, Lockie and Brad.
Well, today we are back with another episode of the Finding Truth podcast, and we're in the second part of our mini-series, which we've called How It Should Have Ended, right? How It Should Have Ended. Sort of based on this idea that there's a YouTube channel that ends films in a way that's more pleasing.
The way they should have ended.
Yeah, end in the way they should have ended. And we thought we'd start with a couple of examples of that as well, just to unburden here for a moment. My wife actually dragged me out a while ago to watch Aquaman.
I'm already laughing.
If you've seen Aquaman, you would know that it's the worst movie ever produced in the history of the film industry.
It was not great.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
And the worst part about it was
The costumes?
it had like three separate probably.
Like, can I just quickly? I've never for a movie made in this modern day and time. I was
Terrible.
Not impressed with the costume.
Terrible.
I was like, this
podcast should be called How Much We Hate Aquaman. Anyways, it literally had three separate endings, and my wife sat there and she enjoyed all 3 hours of it. And at each different ending, I'd be like ready to go. You know, when you find your phone in the dark, like where's it gone? Starts grab your popcorn, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm like packed up. Okay, sick. You know, whatever. He hasn't made it to the cave or wherever he's going, or can't remember. And I'd be like, it's done. And then a whole new plot would start. And then he would come to the same point and a whole new plot would start. So how it should have ended is it shouldn't have started at all, firstly.
Yeah.
But if it did start, it should have ended at that first
at the first point. It should
first
have
point.
ended.
It should have ended.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah. For me, and hopefully you've all seen it and it's not a spoiler, but the new Spider-Man movie, the ending just didn't scratch my itch.
I'm with you there.
Like,
I
actually,
feel the same way.
I mean, the ending where he's swinging out of the building and he's in the original Spider-Man suit, epic. Getting a little bit nerdy here, but when they all forget him, what the heck?
It's and like they worked the whole movie to like establish that relationship with the girl or whatever, and then all of a sudden he's like looking at her through the bar or whatever, and they don't even know each other.
And he didn't even say anything. Anyway,
I agree.
I could rant for hours on this because
I don't even rate. I definitely don't rate Aquaman as a superhero. I almost started to rate Spider-Man.
You don't rate Spider-Man.
I almost started during that movie, and then after that ending, I'm like, I'm done. They make another one. See you later.
I quite like Spider-Man, which is why I was so disappointed with how they finished it. But regardless, we could talk about this all day.
We could, but
we need to. Yeah, we digress. And so this has been a series, I suppose, talking about how sometimes Sundays, and I feel like we're really targeting Sunday schools here, but we do love Sunday school and we love Sunday school teachers.
It's good for a time and for an age, but when you grow up, if you continue to live as if all Sunday school stories are truth, then maybe you need to just explore your Bible a little bit.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so we're exploring how some of these stories in the Bible or some of these verses have actually ended versus the way you might see them in Sunday school or on a coffee mug, or even poorly preached sometimes when you're trying to make a point. And so last week we looked at Jonah and how it actually ended with him throwing a tantrum on a hill. And this week we're looking at the prodigal son. And funnily, another tantrum.
We've got another tantrum.
We have another tantrum.
Yeah.
And so, as you would all know, the prodigal son, he asks his father for his inheritance. Which basically in that, like, there's just nothing more insulting. He goes, I wish you were dead, basically. Like, I have no value in you. I just want what I can get out of you. And he takes all of that and he goes and he lives lavishly and he spends it all and he blows all that money. And he's living literally eating with pigs from memory. And then he decides, I'm going to go back to dad and I'm going to literally just say, just take me back even as a servant. And instead he comes home and his father welcomes him home with open arms and he says, let's slay the fattened cow and we're going to throw a party. And he welcomes him with opened arms. And that is usually where that story ends. But that is not where it ends, is it?
Yeah, that's right. And it sort of gives this thing of like, you can be as bad as you want and as reckless as you want, and God will continue to show grace to you and welcome you in and love you, which is completely true.
Picture.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image, and there's so many ways that we can interpret and study and understand God's character from this passage. But what's interesting is the two parables leading right up to this one.
Yeah.
This is sort of like the final scene. This is like the third act of Aquaman in a sense. It's like there's the lost and found.
Yep.
There's a lost and found, and this time it goes, he was lost, then he comes home, he was found, but then there's this little added extra. It's like when those Marvel movies at the end of the credits, like
the post-credit
scene. That's literally what the author's trying to do.
Feels like that, isn't it?
They're trying to do a post-credit scene, and what happens is we see the older brother out in the field, not wanting to come in and celebrate and share this party of, the younger brother's been found, he's back in with the family. The father even put like a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, like representing this idea of sonship. And he's welcome back, not just as a servant, but as a beloved son. But the older brother just stays outside and has a tantrum. He says, I'm not coming in. I've been, have I not served you so well for all these years? And he starts, listing off all these sort of, in our language, we'd call like religious acts or works of saying, I've done all of these good things. So why didn't you, kill the fattened calf for me?
Yeah.
And just completely misunderstanding that.
I'm pretty sure he's like, I never even got so much as a small lamb or something. And he gets the fattened calf. What the heck?
Yeah.
What is going on? How is that fair? I've never disobeyed you. I've slaved for all these years. I've given everything I have to you, and I get nothing. How is that fair?
And once again, just like we had the prophet of Jonah sort of at the end of the story going, actually, this could be us in a lot of ways, like, not loving our enemies and not wanting grace for our enemies. In the same way, this parable sort of throws it back on us and going, all the things that we do, we think we're such good people and we do all these awesome things and, we're not as bad as those people. They deserve the wrath of God, but just grace for me, hell and condemnation for them, but grace for me.
Yeah.
And we find ourselves in that place going, actually, in what ways have I done that in my own heart and not recognize that, God's grace is going to be poured out abundantly on all of us. We all need God's grace. And there's nothing in our own sort of religiosity or just, ticking boxes of going to church and youth group and all that sort of stuff that can impress God to a level that's beyond somebody who has walked away and come back. It's the same celebration for the two.
That's a good point. And it honestly kind of almost makes you wonder, like when you look at it and you look at these two brothers, one of them's out in the field and you got to ask almost a question, which one is actually lost? Which one is actually, because one is being embraced by the father and coming back into those loving arms, and the other is sitting out in the field having a tantrum. And which brother is actually lost? I don't know. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I 100% agree. Like you've got to wonder if at the end of this story, one of them has got the sandals and the ring and everything is inside the house, having, celebrating with the fattened calf, and one's outside by himself having a pity party. Like, where do we fit in this story? I think a quote that I love is that God's a God to whom we have nothing to hide and nothing to prove. And I think the older brother out in the field is falling into this sin of, I proved my goodness or my righteousness before my father, so I should be celebrated in this way. Whereas God's saying, your righteousness in comparison to my righteousness is still nothing. But I'm going to celebrate the fact that both of you have the opportunity to enter into my kingdom by my grace alone.
Absolutely. That is a great way to end that story. And a great way to end this episode is with another Fact with Jacob.
Facts with Jacob. Woo! We should give me my own theme song.
He started.
So, last week we had facts on gas turbines. This week we also have facts with gas turbines. Did you guys know that there is a secret hidden jet engine inside the plane?
No way.
That's a joke.
I do not believe that.
They do. It's an extra.
There's an extra
jet
engine.
You just said you don't even need an engine to fly the plane last week.
These engines don't provide thrust to push you through the air, though. They only use these engines when they're on the ground, and they use them to provide things like power air conditioning, pneumatics.
Why does it need to be a turbo, like a jet engine then?
Just be a
Because
big
they've already
Why
got
can't it
jet
just be a
fuel on board.
generator?
Well, that's what it is essentially. It's just a jet engine. It's running jet fuel because they already have jet fuel on board.
So it can't offer any form of propulsion.
No, it can't offer any form of propulsion. It only offers things like hydraulic power, pneumatics, electricity, and air conditioning.
So it does all the important stuff, but then it sits downstairs and gets none of the glory. The other
That's
way.
exactly right. When you're on the tarmac,
It's
and
like the older
It's
brother
like the
out
older
in the
brother
field.
out in the field.
That's
It
right.
just does all the heavy lifting. It does the stuff we want, the aircon,
Mhm.
the movies. It runs all of that.
It does. It runs everything. So when you're on the tarmac and you look up at the butt of the plane and you see that little hole right in the rear of it.
Yeah.
That's the exhaust for that gas turbine.
There you go. All the work, none of the credit. There you go. Well, another episode, another week done, and we'll
Another
see
fun
you.
fact with Jacob.
Another fun fact with Jacob. We'll see you next week.